So the fourth Democratic debate recently passed, and it was historical because there were 20 candidates on one stage. CNN has never covered any Democratic debate that had that many damn candidates. My take on the whole election and the Democratic primary is that we need a candidate that believes in and advocates for systemic change. Because the problems that we face in this society aren't just things that can be solved by tweaks around the edges or, little fixes and little adjustments here and there. And the majority of candidates on that stage, in my opinion, that's what they're advocating for. Small changes and little fixes, little adjustments. Whereas we need systemic change. And there are only two candidates, in my opinion, that are for the systemic change that I feel like we need. And to be brief, the rest of them can just, if they don't believe in it, that's what I say. There was one really good highlight from the debate that I want to discuss, and it has to do with the issue of student debt, or American debt in general. Did a little research. The total credit card debt that Americans have now, we're breaking records as far as credit card debt. $1 trillion, according to the Federal Reserve. That's a record. Americans have never been in this much debt as they are today. 1/6 of Americans have $1.5 trillion, $1.5 trillion in federal student loan debt, plus an estimated $119 billion in student loan debt that comes from private sources. Whereas the 1.5 trillion comes from government loans that are burdening students or ex-students, if you will. We have $119 billion in student loan debt that comes from private sources, but it's backed by the government. This type of debt is unheard of in the history of this country. This has never happened. And I think I like my historical context, and I like looking into things and kind of like understanding why the hell is it that we currently live under the circumstances that we do. So I kind of wanted to look into how it came to be that we have crazy debt that's encumbering millions and millions of Americans. What can be done to solve it, right? And how did it happen and what we can do to solve it? Let's talk about that. As we know, in our government, we have lobbyists. Lobbyists that speak to politicians and, express their opinions on what they think should be done to make America a better place, because you're a politician and you're representing America, right? So they say, oh, it'll be great if we change America in this way because it'll be great for America, when in reality, they're just looking out for their damn selves. And this is a great example of that. We have lobbyists that work in the financial industry for years and for decades and decades. And it kind of came to a head in 1999 when Bill Clinton was about to get out of office. There was a bill that came up that was heavily promoted to politicians by the financial industry, right? It was a bill that basically would make it harder for Americans to claim bankruptcy. Why does the financial industry want to make it harder for Americans to file for bankruptcy? The reason is bankruptcy, in essence, is a way that, let's say you're under a lot of debt and it's hard for you to get out of the debt for whatever reason. It was a mistake, whatever the case is. You can go to the government, disclose your finances to them and say, hey, I need help with this debt. And the government then puts in, they have a system in place where they'll reconsolidate your debt. They'll make adjustments to make it easier for you to get from under that debt and move on with your life. The financial industry, of course, is going to lobby the government to make it harder for people to do that, because the financial industry wants to collect their debt with the interest. So that to me is a systemic issue. Why is it that we have people that are a minority of the country, financial institutions, that's not a majority of Americans, that's just a couple of wealthy people, and they're lobbying the government to say, hey, make it harder for people to get out of debt. It's messed up. You look into a little bit of history and you find that Elizabeth Warren, who's one of the candidates that I support. Now, she's my second candidate that I support. I'm more behind Bernie Sanders because he's for real systemic change, whereas Elizabeth Warren is for systemic change, but she kind of plays with the establishment a little, and it makes me a little uncomfortable. Whereas Bernie, they don't like him. And if they don't like him, I don't like them, so I'm on his side, in essence, when it comes to Bernie and the way he's looked at by the establishment. The bill came up for a vote, and we had Elizabeth Warren, who at the time was a professor of economics. And she wasn't in government yet, basically spoke to Hillary Clinton, and she convinced Hillary Clinton to tell her husband at the time to veto the bill. And in 1999, at the end of Bill Clinton's presidency, the bill was vetoed because of Elizabeth Warren. She was a really strong voice in that. And Bernie was on that side too. Bernie voted no on the bill. So he was right on that also.
And just the two of us. They closed the door. Mrs. Clinton sits down. We have hamburgers and French fries.
And you tutor her.
And she says, tell me about bankruptcy. I go over the law. It's a complex law. Went over the economics, showed her the graphs, showed her the charts, and she got it. Within 20 minutes, she could play where the rest of it would come. Well, then that will mean this part's happened. That will mean this has happened. I said, yes, that's right. And at the end of the conversation, Mrs. Clinton stood up. She said, let's get our picture taken, which we did. And she said, Professor Warren, we've got to stop that awful bill, referring to this bankruptcy bill that's sponsored by the credit card companies. So I left. She went back to Washington, and I heard later from someone who was a White House staffer that there were skid marks in the hallways when Mrs. Clinton got back as people reversed direction on that bankruptcy bill.
They were supporting the industry, and because of her...
President Clinton had been showing that this was another way that he could be helpful to business. It wasn't a very high visibility bill. And when Mrs. Clinton came back with a little better understanding of how it all worked, they reversed course, and they reversed course fast. And indeed, the proof is in the pudding. The last bill that came before President Clinton was that bankruptcy bill that was passed by the House and the Senate in 2000, and he vetoed it. And in her autobiography, Mrs. Clinton took credit for that veto, and she rightly should. She turned around a whole administration on the subject of bankruptcy. She got it.
And then?
One of the first bills that came up after she was Senator Clinton was the bankruptcy bill. This is a bill that's like a vampire. It will not die, right? There's a lot of money behind it. And
the bill her husband had vetoed.
Her husband had vetoed it very much at her urging.
And?
She voted in favor of it.
And the thing about, like I said, the issue in this government, one of the main issues is lobbying, and the fact that lobbyists can pay politicians to do what the fuck they want them to do. It's terrible. The bill came up again in 2005, and Elizabeth Warren talks about this, and in 2005 it passed. And it was called the Bankruptcy Abuse Prevention and Consumer Protection Act, BAPCPA. This bill, not only did it make it harder for the average American to file for bankruptcy and get rid of their debt, but it made it impossible for students to even file for bankruptcy. How crazy is that? Why would you make it impossible? That's why students can't file for bankruptcy and they can't reconsolidate their debt. They can't even, your debt goes according to interest rates, right? So the interest you pay on your debt goes up and down based on the general interest rates with regards to the economy at large. And that's controlled by the Federal Reserve, more or less. If you're a student, you can't even, I don't know if this changed recently, but as of last I looked at it, you can't even renegotiate your debt to pay at a lower interest rate when interest rates change. So you're telling me a rich person like Donald Trump can do all types of fancy financial maneuvering in order to get rid of his debt, to offset his debt, to do bankruptcy situation where he comes out on top, and the average American student can't. If that's not a broken system, I don't know what is. That's why I say fuck Joe Biden. Joe Biden basically whipped up votes and was one of the main Democrats in support of that bill when it passed in 2005. So in other words, he can be co-opted by powers, and he has been co-opted by the powers that be all his political life, I would argue. He'll do what they want him to do as opposed to doing what the American people want him to do. That's why, again, fuck Joe Biden. There's a clip of him earlier this year. I think this was around the time or a little before he announced that he was running for president, where he says he doesn't even feel sorry for any of the millennials or the young kids. He says they think they have it hard. Give me a break.
The younger generation now tells me how tough things are. Give me a break. No. I have no empathy for it. Give me a break.
Not only are you not cognizant of the fact that there's more student debt now than ever. These millennials graduated into a economy that was in free-for-all because of the shit that you and your generation did. And you're going to come at us and say we don't have it hard. Not only do we have it harder, but because of you, we have it harder. And you're going to say, you have no sympathy. You have no sympathy for us. What kind of shit? If you're under the age of 30 and you vote for Joe Biden, God bless your soul, or just go under a rock, or what the fuck fuck with the flying fuck the fuck. I don't know. It doesn't make no sense to me. It doesn't make any remote sense to me. Don't vote for him. And I know America and, vote for whoever you want. Don't vote for him if you're a person of conscience. Like, seriously. But anyway. And this is the political system that we live in. You have lobbyists that just, hey, do this. Do what I want. And the people that are supposed to be representing us represent them as opposed to representing us. Now, I mean, that's an important issue because the real point that I'm trying to bring home why I'm doing this piece is because you would have Joe Biden talking about how I did all of this, and I'm so experienced and I've been in government forever. I'm the one to lead the country, etc. type of nonsense, right? That's the type of shit that he says. It doesn't matter the fact that you have a lot of experience. That's neither here nor there. I don't give a shit. The question is, what did you do? If you advocated for people and you advocated for the right issues, then I'm down. It doesn't matter what type of experience. What did you do? How did you earn your experience? That's the question. Because when it comes to this bankruptcy bill, you were wrong on it. Bernie Sanders called him out on it in an aggressive way. And AOC, the congresswoman from the 14th District of New York, the district that I work in, Astoria, what it do, even though I hate Queens. She's supporting Bernie now. Her and Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, which are some of the new progressive women that got voted into Congress in 2018. They're supporting Bernie, and AOC is going to be at a park. They're doing a rally. Bernie's having a rally in Long Island City in Queens. And AOC is going to be there, and she's going to do a little speech. I'm going to be there. Maybe I'll shoot something. I'll film something. Probably, yeah. I think the progressives are on a roll. Like, and coming back to the election at large, they say that Americans they don't want a left agenda, or they don't want like a super progressive agenda, right? The two leading candidates right now in the general polling, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Now, Elizabeth Warren is number one right now, and I prefer Bernie, but hey, Elizabeth Warren, I wouldn't be too mad because she'll do a lot of great things. She did the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that actually gave $1 billion in stolen money because these financial institutions steal from average Americans. Why? Because we don't really know finances. That's a specialized field that we have to be engaged in because we have money and we're in the economy. We participate in the economy. It's just that we don't know a lot about finances because we're average folks. So we found that there's billions and billions of dollars worth of fraud that happens within the financial industry. And Elizabeth Warren knew this, a professor of economics. She knew this. And she started the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau in order to return that money to average citizens and do right by the people. That's the type of shit that I'm talking about. That's amazing. That's what it is right there. And even though she's not my top candidate, she made it do what it do, and I got to give her credit for that. This is what I'm really trying to get across, is that in this current political climate, we need someone who's going to advocate for systemic change, period. Tweaks around the edges are not going to cut it. If we want to beat that orange flavor we got to come with fire. Bernie has fire. Liz, maybe a little less fire, but she got fire too. Let's kill it. Let's get it. Get out there, vote, let people know, spread this video, do what you got to do, because these are things that can get done. Don't check out of the system. Don't check out of it, because we live here. Therefore, we're responsible for what happens here. That's the way I see it. So get involved. Vote Bernie, straight like that. That's what I'll say, like that. If he doesn't make it and Elizabeth Warren gets it, vote Liz. Vote Liz Dubs, Elizabeth Warren. You know what I'm saying?
Take our black asses out of here. Won't you take our black asses out of here? Won't you come save us, catch up, and kill all these crackers? Come save us, catch up.